we got engaged within 3 months and married in 7. So were we crazy or did God have a plan? Today, I'm sharing a personal story of how Mike and I have met, how we knew we were the one, and why we didn't wait forever before getting married. And this is not just another love story, it's really a testimony of what happens when we truly surrender to God, our dreams, our fears, and our timeline. Since I was 14, I had multiple different boyfriends, and I just never knew how to be single because I was looking for this affirmation or this. I don't even know what I was looking for, but I was putting these expectations in other boyfriends and just really, I don't even know. It was very interesting. It's very interesting now to look back and seeing all these gaps that I had and having the fixed mindset that I had and understanding. And of course, like back then, I didn't believe that anything was wrong with me. But now looking back, I'm seeing how much I lacked confidence and lacked believing that I was worthy just being by myself and just really, yeah, it was a very interesting time of mine, like starting from 14 and just kind of searching and figuring things out, and then realizing later on that I never wanted to be married or have kids because I became very jaded. And based on those past relationships, I just became jaded and very feminist. I would always say things like, I never want to be married. I never want to have kids. I will never put my the power or any power and control in a man, and let alone my future and my success. I would never do that. And I can do it all. I'm so awesome. Like all of these things, even though I lacked a lot of worthiness and confidence. And it just really, now seeing that I was very arrogant and very manipulative because then I knew that I had control on other people, which is a very bad situation and bad behavior and just bad mindset. But that's where I was at. Eventually, I graduated university with a marketing degree. And like a lot of us, we believe that when we go to university, after we graduate, we're going to make a six figures and we're going to be traveling the world and eat in fine dining and just have the life. And none of that happened. I ended up working in a bank and I loved my life. I loved everything about it, like my social life, my coworkers, my work, just everything. I had the dream life back then. And I still decided that something was missing. So I decided that next year I was going to move to Australia indefinitely and not just book a one-way ticket and explore life. Kind of crazy a little bit now that I'm thinking about that. And I just, yeah. So when I decided to move to Australia, I decided that I was going to completely not date anybody. I didn't want any opportunity of anybody swaying my decision and end up staying in Montreal. I just didn't want any of that. And so I had made this decision. This is my new goal and this is what I'm going to do. No distractions. I paid off $15,000 of debt, not my student loan, just my credit card debt. And I left for Australia with $15,000 in credit card. That was very silly decision, but that's what I did. I end up loving being single so much that I decided to prolong my singleness. It almost like it was an end destination or something. Like it was just such an interesting mindset now that I look back and realize how I thought and just seeing how much I lacked whatever, like confidence and not feeling worthy or whatever that I was looking for in other people and putting that pressure and expectations. And anyway, very interesting. I ended up moving back to Canada and then went to Calgary, Alberta, where my parents were. And I just wanted to stop by and say hello and then go to Vancouver after. But God had different plans for me. End up meeting this awesome couple. They told me about Christ, and I just started building my relationship with Jesus, and it's been absolutely amazing ever since. And then obviously God has worked in my heart, and I wanted to be married and have children and all these beautiful things. And I had said at that time that the next guy I was going to date, I was going to marry. I was invited to this birthday party, and this girl that I just had met at the library, we had a great conversation, totally hit it off. And she was brand new to the city and had said, my friend is throwing a party for me and I don't know a lot of people. And would you like to come? And I was like, sure, absolutely. And at the party, that lady and I were hanging out a little bit. And then Micah ended up showing up. He was friends with that guy who was throwing a party for her. And I saw him and I was like, well, hello. And we had a great conversation. That day we hung out the entire time. We had conversations about our dreams and our goals and our personality type and our love languages and just like great deep conversations, and people around us probably knew that something was going on. We totally were like, well, we like to talk about like real stuff. I'm really not an advocate for small talk. I don't know how to do small talk. Talk to me about your life and like what you're excited about and really having real conversations. And so both Mike and I are like that, where we don't know how to do small talk. So to me, it was just very normal for us to be talking about life and our goals and, and I ended up leaving the party and we didn't exchange contact information. And the crazy thing is, we kept on bumping into each other in that city. It was absolutely crazy. And Calgary in Alberta is not that big. It's about 1 million people. And we somehow kept on bumping into each other all the time. And then every time we would get into great conversations. And like one day I bumped into him at a grocery store in the cracker aisle, like exactly like in the movies. And I'm 5'1" and nothing. And so I'm too short to go grab the crackers on top. And so Micah just walked by and I said, hey, do you mind grabbing that for me? And then we just walked through the aisles together. And that was some of the things that we really like to do. We would just like go grocery shopping together. And it was just so awesome. And then eventually I saw Micah at my church. And my version of the story is that he came to my church because he knew that I was going there. But if you ask him, he would tell you that he decided to change church because he needed a change. So I'll allow you to believe which story you want. And anyway, but I saw him at my church, and every time we would close the church together after the service, we would sit there and have a 3 hour conversation and just really talking about everything and anything. And it was absolutely amazing. And after closing the church, we would go to the grocery store and go grocery shopping together. And I know that a lot of us, we don't like grocery shopping. But for me, I absolutely love grocery shopping. I love walking through the aisle, every single aisle. Even if I don't need anything, I just like to walk around and see what's there. And I just, to be honest, so first, I love grocery shopping. And second, I couldn't care less about what we were doing. I just wanted to hang out with Micah. I wanted to have conversations with him and just, yeah. So it was awesome. So this lasted for a few months. And then one Sunday, after closing the church and after going grocery shopping together, we split ways because that's how we did it. We both had our cars. And then we lived very close to each other. And so we would drive on the same road together. And then we would just split ways at the end when he would turn to his house. And as I'm unloading the car, I see this red car coming to like park right behind me on the street. And I'm like, oh, that looks like Micah's car. But obviously, that's just me wishing that was him. So I'm like, okay, you're crazy. Keep unloading. And I'm unloading. And then he comes out and he's like, hey, just have a second. And I'm like, did I forget my wallet? What's going on here? And so anyway, we end up talking, and essentially the conversation was, okay, so both of us are very intentional. We don't keep the opposite gender relationship just for fun. And so what is going on here essentially? And so then we started dating that day, which was amazing. And since that day, we've been seeing each other pretty much every single day. And it's been 11 years that we're married now, and 11 and a half that we've been together. And out of those 11 years, there's maybe 7 to 10 days that we haven't physically seen each other, and that includes like business trips and just like stuff like that. We just hung out together all the time, and we went on this dating, courting relationship, and just really drill each other with questions, and questions that you don't really ask on a first date because it's personal. But I just wasn't there to play a game. I just wanted to see if it was material to be married. And even though I've spent a lot of time getting to know him already before, I just, and that's what Mike and I talk about all the time. So our girls are not going to be dating until they're in age to get married, because dating to us is to get to know the other person in order to see if they're marriage material. And if they're marriage material, then why are you waiting? And so that's exactly what happened for us. And within 2 weeks of asking all these deeper questions, and now it was like a little deeper than when we were just friends, because now I'm able to ask, like, okay, so what do you struggle with? Like, what are you excited about? Like, and how do you see your family life? And how do you want to raise your kids? Where do you want to live? And all these things. And I remember one of the things, so my dream since I was in elementary school was to live in California. I was reading the Babysitter Club book series, and I was absolutely in love with Dawn, this blonde, blue eyes lady who, well, lady, like a high schooler, who lived in California, like by the beach. And I was like, there is something like that in the world. I want to live by the beach. And like how it's always hot. And so ever since in elementary school, that was my dream. I wanted to live in California. So on her first date, I was like, I want to live in California. I am moving there. Are you in? Are you out? And Micah was like, yeah, I don't care. It's California. I just want to be by the beach. So that was perfect for us. And a lot of those questions we've had, and I know Micah's dream was to be a husband and a dad. He didn't care about anything else. That's all he wanted. And yeah, so we had a lot of great conversations. And I personally knew that he was the one that I was going to marry within 2 weeks. And I know that a lot of us, we hear that and we're like, okay, you're a little intense. And I am intense. But it's a little crazy when the world around us tells us, oh, but you should be getting engaged, and then like years after being dating, and then years after being engaged, then getting married. Like, don't jump into it. Take advantage of life and embrace it and whatever. But to me, is if I know he's the man I'm gonna marry, why am I waiting? This is the weirdest thing in my mind. And so Mike and I, we knew, like we talked about that. And like I said, within 2 weeks, I knew I was going to marry the guy. And he said like about a month for him. And it was very interesting because I knew he was legit. So we started dating in November. And then in December, when we were walking through the mall and the Christmas songs, and I love doing those things. And so mostly when you see all these people panicking because they're last minute, and then we're walking peacefully, enjoying the time, listening to music, Christmas music. I just love that. And like looking the lights and at the lights and all that. And so anyway, and I knew Micah was legit when he said, can you imagine that this time next year we would be married? And I was like, awesome. I know that this is for real. And within 3 months of dating, he asked me to marry him. And it was such a beautiful day. He had planned this whole day full of dates and the places that I loved and just the things that I loved. And it was just absolutely amazing. And I was so surprised. And a friend actually was hiding throughout the day, and she was taking pictures of us. And so we have this awesome picture of an engagement day, and it was amazing. I'm so grateful for that. And then came the time that we got to pick the date, and it was going to be awesome. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, we got to wait a year because that's what the world around us tells us to do. And realizing how much I've allowed worldly expectations to dictate how I was going to plan my wedding, how I was going to live, and all of these things that is absolutely crazy in my mind. And I remember Micah asking, like, okay, why do you think that we need to wait for a year? Like, why can we get married sooner? And I didn't have a good answer to that. I was just like, well, it's going to take like a year to get to plan the wedding and to do all of these things. And it's like, no, no. I remember even looking into like those things that you put in the middle of the table and like the reception and like wanting everything to be perfect. And I was super stressed. I was calling places and I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember Micah going, you sound really stressed for a day that's supposed to be this beautiful, joyful, and peaceful day. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And he's like, we don't need a reception if it's going to create stress for you. And I was like, you are dang right. We ended up having a pizza party, and it was a blast. And I had that idea actually from a friend who had a barbecue as a reception, and I just love the minimalistic aspect of that. And all of that to say is that when we fully surrender to God and allow him to speak into us and use us and have his timing and not trying to control everything like I was, then everything falls into places because God has a plan for us, and his plan is to far more better than what we have in our mind. If you would have told me that I was going to be engaged within 3 months and married within 7, I would have thought you were out of your mind. And that just to show how much when we trust God and allow him to work into his own perfect timing, everything works out perfectly. Because I would have never chosen to do that. I thought that was crazy. But for God, nothing is crazy. If you are a single lady, I know how challenging it can be that we see all these people around us getting engaged and married and have their happy ending. And we are excited and antsy to be like, okay, God, when is it going to be my turn? I think I've been patient. I think I've done good work. But it's not about that. It's about God's timing. When we trust him, everything's going to work out. And I know that, the world around us tells us things like, you're running out of time. Well, don't be too picky. And, you just got to date around. But I pray that if this is your situation, that you do not allow the people around us to speak louder than God's voice, because God has a perfect plan for you. And the plan that none of us would have thought about, because you are not forgotten, you are not behind, and you're not running out of time. God's timing is absolutely perfect. And if you're in a relationship right now, I do pray that you are allowing God to speak through you and use you for his glory, and to not allow any worldly pressure around you to dictate your decisions. People have told us to have a fancier engagement party, to have a bigger wedding party, and to have a bigger wedding ring, and all of these things. And we wanted to be respectful to what we had and what God has given us, and to not go into debt, and to not have this party with people that we didn't really care about or are going to talk to anymore. And I know that it's culturally, for Asians anyway, we are really big into these massive wedding parties, like 200 to 400 people, and that's just normal. But Micah and I wanted to do things differently. And I know that sometimes it can rub feathers the wrong way, but at the end of the day, this is a wedding. This is the one day that I'm going to remember, not anybody else, because that's not their wedding. Because at the end of the day, this is my wedding. Me showing the world that I am committing before God to be forever with Micah. If you want to hear how marriage is after 4 kids that nobody talks about, check the next video.